Getting started with your dev environment, well, you need to know what tools are actually available for you. Well, find out next right here on IT Pro TV.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
That's right, we are getting started in setting up the dev tools inside of a Linux environment. And here to help us out is going to be Mr. Justin Denson. Justin, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Ryan.
All right, Justin, as we get started in terms of our development environment, let's explain please explain, I should say, what that dev environment is and why the heck did you choose Linux?
All right, so I would run Linux as a daily driver. Let's put that up front if it wasn't for some niceties like Zoom and things here. And my personal computers, I run Linux a great number of times. Setting up Linux, I just like the feel of it. The tooling makes sense to me. Also, I've done a bunch of web development, so I had to be familiar with Linux anyway to set up servers and so on and so forth. I could have used alternative operating systems. It's just easier to use Linux just because of the guides. Now, as far as dev environment, for me, my dev environment is my daily use, right? But if you're just going to tinker, you may not have these on your normal computer. What we're trying to do is create a core set of tools that are going to make your life easy. Do you absolutely need all of these? No. Are you going to need at least 2 of them? Absolutely, because otherwise, shenanigans. What we're going to do is we're going to set up with Python, a basic editor, version control, and an additional tool that will help with understanding web requests called Postman.
All right, so Justin, is there any particular order that we need to set these things up in as we get started?
So for these all work together, but they don't necessarily have to be in a particular order because they don't depend on one another,
Right,
so to speak. So we're just going to go through them however they come, and we should be good.
All right, so what are we going to get started with?
All right, so I think the first place to start is let's get our downloads going, because sometimes downloading takes a little while, right? So if we take a look at my screen here, we're in Visual Studio Code. You're like, what is Visual Studio Code? You're more than welcome to use Notepad, Notepad++, text edit. You have to be careful. It has to be a raw text format. You can't save source code of any sort in like a rich text format because that has embedded metadata that if you try to run it with like Python or anything like that, Python's going to go, it's broke. All right. So this is the simplest one. There's some alternatives, Sublime, Atom, Text Wrangler, TextMate, that do similar features, but Microsoft has a strong push here. I think the tooling that you can add on to Visual Studio Code is pretty top-notch in my comparison. Some people would disagree. And, well, you could go the opposite way and go something minimalist like Nano or Vim or VI, which you may see me sometimes use just for ease of use, right? But when you're on a Linux machine, or if you're on a Windows machine, or if you're on a Mac, when you come to this web page, it will try to detect what operating system you're on. It doesn't always get it right. A good portion of the time, it does. Every once in a while, I've noticed I'm like, no, I'm not on a Linux machine. I'm actually on my Mac. But we're using Ubuntu for this install. If you're using alternative Linux that's based on Red Hat, Fedora, you would need to use the .rpm. For us, we're going to use the .deb because Ubuntu is based on Debian. If you've went way esoteric and decided to go somewhere else in Linux land, Arch Linux, so to speak, then, well, I'm just going to be honest with you, you're on your own. That's all up to you. If you're using Arch Linux, you're probably good to go. You'll figure this out. You would need to go to some of these other downloads and grab some packages or source code in order to install those. And if I'm not mistaken, there may be tooling to convert like a Debian package or an RPM package to the respective install. Now, I've already downloaded that. You should click one of those, download it. The other thing is Postman. So getpostman.com. And just before I get too far ahead of myself, code.visualstudio.com. All right. And then getpostman.com. This app is going to help us with web requests. All we're going to do is click download the app, and then it's going to ask you to download. For us, I'm using a 64-bit version. More than likely, if you have a new install, you're using a 64-bit version. There are times, edge cases, where you're using 32-bit. Just keep in mind, in the long term, 32-bit in Linux world could get a little iffy. So try to think about moving toward a 64-bit platform. So I downloaded 64-bit. I just wanted to show you that because if you click this button, it doesn't do anything. It's not actually a button. It's just like a little hover over. So I've downloaded that as well. This is a gzip file, a tar gzip file. That's like a zip file or a 7-zip file or just some kind of archive. So it's not an installer. Those are both downloaded in my downloads. And now, well, I say we go ahead and install those, right? Well, we're only going to be able to install one. And then we got to take a detour from point and click graphical user land to the text-based terminal land. And I'll take you through those. No worries there. So we're going to click on the little archive or the files, like the filing cabinet, and go to downloads. And right here, you'll notice I have some files and folders. You will probably not have this folder. If you double click this like so and click extract and extract it to the same folder, you will get that to your downloads folder. You will get that Postman folder. I've already done that because it can take a little bit of time. But this code.deb, right, that's a Debian package. If I double click it, all it's going to do is open my software manager, right? And it's going to load that .deb and it's going to say, hey, do you want to install? I just said, yeah, I want to install. Now in Linux, I have to provide a password and I have to be on a user that allows me to install new software. If someone else has set up your Linux computer and you find that this just goes, no, you can't do this, then your user doesn't have permissions to install new software. You'll have to get somebody else involved. That's more than likely going to be on like a work computer or something. But if you've accidentally set your own user up wrong when you're installing Linux, just keep that in mind. So I almost forgot my password. You type your password, it starts installing, and these Debian packages are usually pretty quick installs. They're all self-contained. Everything's good to go. Every once in a while, you'll get some that, hey, we're installing, and it'll hang at about 95%. Give it time. Don't get worried. Give it time. Now, if it's been going for like 2 days, yeah, you should probably stop it. Additionally, if you had multiple packages to install and you double-click them, you need to do them one at a time because Linux will lock resources and you'll get weird error messages if you're trying to do too many things at once. And that's just so it can keep track of what's installed and what's not. Code is installed, looks good. What we're going to do is we're going to come down to this little ... right? Our little show applications and boop. And then all I'm going to do is type visual and it should populate with what's called a launcher. I'm going to click it and Visual Studio Code's going to launch. That means our install is good. All right.
All right. So just as a reminder, as people are getting started, as we're getting started here, the Visual Studio Code is what we're using as a text editor, essentially, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And
yeah,
those text editor, only reason you're like, wait a minute, I have a text editor.
Right.
But it provides syntax highlighting, some additional tooling that will make your life easier.
And it's probably the one that you ended up using in the show too,
Yep.
right? That's what we're going to use. All right.
Yeah, we'll use that, and I'll probably hop over into Vim some as well, just because I'm used to it. You don't have to. You can always use Visual Studio Code anywhere that I'm using Vim.
All right, so now that we have the text editor, I know that we'll probably launch Postman as well, just trying to get it up and verify that it's installed. So what would be the next thing after that that we would do?
All right, so let's take a detour, because Postman's actually one of those edge case where in Linux land you end up with a folder that actually has the application already it's done. But setting it up to make it a little easier would be nice. So what I'm going to do is if you click on your little show applications and you type terminal, it will open a terminal screen. All right, now I already have one open, so I'm just going to click on it, and I've zoomed in some. I'm in my downloads folder. I'm going to start back at the beginning. This is where you'll open up to. You'll be in what's called your home directory, and if you type ls, that'll list everything. So I'm going to cd into downloads, hit ls, and you'll see those exact same folders and files that we saw in our graphical user interface. All right. I'm just coming there because we're going to use that momentarily. But the cool thing with Linux is I also have other tools called package managers that will help me download repositories, software that may be indexed somewhere else. We need a couple other things. We need Python, hopefully the latest and greatest, and we need Git, which is our version control that we're going to be using. So what I like to do is I say like git -- version. And it says, nope. But look at that. Hey, you should just try to sudo apt install git. Sudo apt install git. I will forewarn you, I've removed the usage of passwords for sudo on this machine. You will get a prompt to type in your password when you type this. So sudo, yep. And then it says, do you want to continue? Because it gives you a rundown of what you're installing. You go, absolutely. Be careful. Don't just blindly say absolutely. I know what Git is, so I'm fine. But if you're doing other things, just know that's the case. So I'm going to clear the screen and type git -- version. And now I have Git version 2.17.1. You go, oh, okay. I didn't have to go download anything. I just said, hey, can you install Git? You may not get the absolute latest and greatest. You get pretty close. And now, anytime you have to do updates, this will be part of your updates that it's looking for. So we're good. That's why I like package managers. So we have our Visual Studio Code, our text editor. We have our version control. Awesome. Well, we're going to use Python. In Linux land, Python a lot of times exists. So if I type Python -- version, it goes no. Cannot, but can be installed with apt install Python 3, apt install Python, Python minimal. You also have Python 3 installed. You can just run Python 3. Now, from here on out, anytime during the show I would type Python, you're more than welcome to type Python 3. But I really like to run a little command to make it a little easier for you to get started. Do be aware that you may have to remove this later if you have to do updates or installs. So I'm going to type sudo ln space -s and user bin Python 3 to user bin Python. All right. This is called a symbolic link. All I'm doing is creating a different name for the same Python 3 executable. All right. So boom. And now I should be able to go Python -- version. And now we have Python 3.6.9. The latest version of Python at the time of this recording is 3.8. We're good with 3.6. As long as it's 3.5 and above, you should be good. Below 3.5 had some weirdness. So if you do need to do that, then if you find that it's less, try a sudo apt upgrade. I'll just put a -y there, and that will update any packages that need to be updated. All right. So now we have Git, Visual Studio Code. Python's good to go. We didn't actually have to install it, which is good. Our last thing is Postman, right? Postman is in this folder that we extracted. And you'll notice, and I just typed a command here so I can get a different listing. That's list everything with a bunch of information, human readable sizes, and all attributes. It says, oh, it points to this app Postman. So there's an executable, a binary there. If I just point to that, what will happen is it will open the Postman application. So it's already created. You're good to go. All right. That's not, okay. It's not great. The same thing can be said if I come here and I double click the Postman executable, it will also open Postman. When you have applications like this, you could leave them in your downloads folder. You could put them on your desktop. A very common pattern, there's a couple of different common patterns. You can put them in folders specific to you. They can be hidden, non-hidden. What I like to do, depending on whether you want it system-wide or not, I'm going to show you system-wide, depending on permissions, is I'm going to come out a folder, and I'm going to move the Postman folder to to /opt or opt. And I'm just going to lowercase it, okay? And I do have to have a sudo because that's I have to escalate my privileges. And now I'm going to do one other thing. Sudo -ln -s, /opt postman to user bin postman. I'm creating a link. So now I can just type postman and boom, I have that open. That's me being very terminal centric. If you do just want to double click on those, then if you scroll out, you click here and you go to, you have to go to other locations, go to my computer, opt, Postman, and then double click it. Or you can just put it on your desktop. That works perfectly fine as well. This is a good way to take all those apps and put them in a central location. That way you're not like, now where did I put that? Is that downloads, desktop, shared folder? I don't know. So that's where I put them. Boom. We now have our basic core set of dev tools up and going on a Linux machine.
All right, Justin, that sounds actually something that's going to be great for us as we get started in this show. And we'll be using all those tools during this show as it comes up. But is there anything else that we need to actually think about getting installed?
Well, these are our core, but sometimes there's nice to haves, right? Things that make our development life easier, especially when we end up with more complicated situations, such as I need multiple computers on my machine. I need to stand up, router simulators or whatever it may be. So maybe we'll take a break, we'll come back, and we'll talk, or I'll show how to install Vagrant, VirtualBox, and Docker to help address some of those more complex setup and simulation tasks.
All right. Well, you heard it right here. That's right. You've got your basic tools actually installed now on your Linux machine, and now means we might need to set up something a little bit more for the complexity that we might get involved in, but that is for another episode. So signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm your host, Ronnie Wong.
And I'm Justin Dennison.
Stay tuned right here for more of your Cisco Certified DevNet Associate Show.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.